I'm here at Hyundai in Sainte-Julie, Quebec to look at a pretty special car. Our spotlight today is on this 1986 Hyundai Pony GL. Now, believe it or not, there actually are a lot of these still left on the road. Here in Canada, Hyundai originally thought that they'd sell maybe 5,000 of these in their first year, but they ended up selling over 20,000 of them. So this was a very popular car, and for a lot of people that we talked to, it's actually the first car that they actually drove in when they were a kid. So we're going to be showing you everything about this, taking this car on a road test, and going over everything you need to know if you're in the market for a 31-year-old Hyundai Pony. Now, I say that this is a special car for a number of reasons. Like I said, they sold 25,000 of these here in Canada in 1984, and while it only ran until the 1987 model year, it really does represent the first car that a lot of young people who are about my age now would have driven it when they were young. It was their parents' car that they had when they were born. But it's also special because here at TestDrive, we've been looking for classic cars. And if you take a look at our website, perpetualradio.ca, we have a list of vehicles that we're looking for. And in the description, about a year ago when I wrote it, I said, we'll take anything from your top-end Mercedes-Benz S-Class down to the nitty-gritty Hyundai Pony. It was just a joke. I was just trying to explain that we're looking for anything, not just the luxury cars, but pretty much anything. Now, for the Canadian spec version, it's a little different than what they got in Europe. You have these terrible 8-kilometer-an-hour bumpers up front and on the back. You could probably swap them out if you wanted to, but finding parts for it is probably much more difficult than it would be for something like a Mercedes Roadster. So you're probably going to stick with them. And when it comes to the side signal repeaters in Europe, they did not offer them here. They're just these signal repeaters on the corner of the car, and they also have sealed headlights up front. But aside from that, you're looking at pretty much what you would have gotten no matter where you were, and it seems like this is the most popular color because out of the 5 Hyundai Ponys we've seen since the first one we found, they're all in this silver color. Now, this also comes with the 1.6 liter engine. It's the little bit bigger version. It's not that quick, and we'll be taking it on a road test to talk about it, but this really would have been the one that most people would have looked at because price was affordable. 1.6 liters wasn't too bad, really, at the time. And, it's a 4-door hatchback, so you get a little bit of space in it, even though today's standards have certainly changed. We'll talk about that, too. Now, I know I take up a lot of space here. I've had to move the seat back and even lean it back a little bit just to fit. My head doesn't fit, so even if I wasn't as horizontally challenged, the vertical challenge here would certainly still be there. But for the most part, I mean, you're not getting anything you wouldn't expect from a 1986 vehicle. Again, this isn't fully loaded, it's right in the middle. So you do have a few little things that are nice to have. There's a clock on the speedometer. That's the big upgrade with the GL. You also have a front defroster, rear defroster. There's no air conditioning, but you do have vents. There's a knob here, I'm really not too sure what it does. It's got a little slider on it and a circle. Don't know if it's not the fan speed, it's something else. So there's some ambiguity there with some of the HVAC controls, but it's all on the cluster here. So if you're a passenger, you'd have to reach over, which I think is a little interesting. You have a little cubby in the center here. You've got vents on either side of the car, vents in the center, and then your AM, FM, and cassette player in the center. It actually works still, believe it or not, and it's the original Hyundai stereo. You have cigarette lighter and ashtray in the center, parking brake, and little trays here to be able to store some stuff. You do have your glove box. Now, it's interesting with the blank buttons on the left side of the instrument cluster here. They've got the wording for what they would be for if they were there. And it's interesting that you've got air conditioning, which doesn't have it, rear fog, and front fog. But it is interesting that they've got the label for them, just not the buttons. Now, below that, you have your windshield washer, which is a little knob, and you also have your choke. Yes, this car is one of those cars with a carburetor and a choke, so you need to be able to pull it out before you start it up. And that's the thing, there isn't a whole lot to it. It's relatively straightforward, even by 80s standards, and I do have pretty good knowledge of what was going on with vehicles in the 80s because I grew up with a lot of them. So it's certainly nothing unique. I think it's interesting that it still exists, and it is in good condition. Not great condition, but what you would expect from a car of this age. It's certainly in good shape. Now, I'm not going to get in the back seats, but they do exist. They do allow you to sit back there, but there is space if you wanted to. But really, this is an interesting car by today's standards, because you don't see a ton of them. You do see them if you go to a classic car show, especially like an obscure car show. So they do exist. I think it's just cool that somebody held on to it and were able to take a look at it. Now let's take it on the road and see what the 1980s feel like by today's standards. Oh my God, can I tell you that this is quite a little experience here. It is a very unique vehicle in the sense that you really wouldn't expect these to really exist anymore. So being able to see one on the road is probably pretty interesting. Furthermore, driving one is pretty interesting too. It is tight. You can see here I'm actually not sitting very comfortably. I had to put the back of the seat a little bit further back than I would. I'm not really in a comfortable position here, but if I sit up, I'm actually poking into the roof. I can actually feel it. Something that you don't usually feel with any car. But it does work. I gotta give Hyundai credit for the fact that they made a car that could last pretty much 31 years. It's in pretty good shape. Is it quick? No, not even remotely quick. And it's a 1.6 liter. This is actually the engine to get. If you were looking at the Pony back when it was new, if you got the GLS, it came with the 1.6. But this one, the GL, right in the middle of the 3 trims that they offered here in Canada, you could have gotten it as an option. And thankfully they did, because I can only imagine how much slower this car would actually be if it didn't have that engine. Oh man, no power steering. It is, there's a lot of give with it too. Like, it just goes nowhere, and then it's really stiff. But it's enjoyable in a different sense. I mean, this is certainly a very different vehicle than we featured here on Test Drive. And it's a very important car too, I think, for a lot of people, because we posted a couple of these. This is the second one that we were hoping to film. And again, big thanks to the Yando Hyundai here in Sainte-Julie for letting it happen, because you don't see these often. You do see them, because I've seen a number of them show up on social media, especially in Toronto. People have held on to these for whatever reason. I think it's just awesome to be able to drive this car in an original format too. I mean, there's no modifications. The engine is original, everything else is original. This car is as original as it comes. Front wheel drive, no power anything. This was life back in 1986. Whoa, you're getting a workout every time you gotta turn the wheel. Holy, this is not the first car I've driven without power steering either. I mean, growing up, it's all we had was vehicles without power steering. But I just find that, like, it feels smaller. First car I ever drove ever in my life on my own, and both, with my G1 learner's permit in Ontario, was my father's 1987 Honda Civic wagon, the shuttle. I don't remember being this small, at least. I certainly was smaller than I am now, but I feel it was a little bit different. But this, certainly interesting. Definitely period correct. Definitely makes me feel like we're in the 80s here. Now, let's see, we're at a stop. Yeah, there's no tach with this. The GLS comes with the tachometer, but I can feel, I don't know if you can feel it or hear it in the video, but it is shaking a little bit. This is flooring it. It says we're doing 40. Hey, maybe we are. I have no idea. The needle on the speedometer here is kind of going all over the place. But that's okay. This car, no turn signals. But this car is not really meant to be going fast. I mean, it's nice to have it go a little fast because I am sort of fogging up here, and the faster I go, the more air comes out, which is kind of silly. But this car is not meant to go fast. This car is, at this point in its life, meant for me to drive it around for 5 minutes, call it a day, and then hopefully bring it back to the dealership in one piece. Now, one of the joys of driving an old car like this is the plethora of problems that you will most certainly have. And this definitely has it. As I came up to the stop there, the parking brake light came on and it's flickering on and off. I think it's just probably a bad connection there. Same thing too, the seatbelt light was on when I first got into it, even though the seatbelt was connected. So yeah, you kind of have to live with the quirks and the charm that comes with a car like this. Are you going to be daily driving it? Absolutely not. Oh my God, if you daily drove this, kudos to you, especially since I highly doubt that the radio actually works. Wow. Impressive, the radio actually works. You've got a cassette player, so you've got that as a plus, and that was FM and it worked. So yeah, you could, I guess. It's just really slow. It's really slow. Whoa! Too much power there, Hyundai. Whoa, buddy. we better slow it down. I don't want to get a ticket. How embarrassing. How utterly embarrassing would it be to get a speeding ticket? I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with the car. I'm just saying that it would be really embarrassing because this car really does not go fast. And if I got a speeding ticket with it, I guess I could wear it as a badge of honor that I got a speeding ticket with a Hyundai Pony, but oh boy, that feels like the 80s just every time. Ooh, let's go, little pony. I don't know how many horses you've lost since 86. I'm not light either, but it goes though. You know what? That's the great thing. This car started up, battery was flat, but it started up with no issues. 31 years on, no issues with this thing. And yeah, I mean, it feels like the 80s. The whole car's falling apart as we're going over the bumps here in Quebec. But I think that's the big, not surprise, but I think that's the big kind of joy of this car is not only did it survive 31 years, which for a Hyundai Pony is incredible, it survived 31 years in Quebec with these terrible roads that are probably also from the 80s. So is this the best car we featured in 2018 on Test Drive? Or is it the absolute worst? I feel it's both at the same time. This is one of the best cars for a number of reasons. It has a special meaning to a lot of people who grew up with memories of their parents owning a Hyundai Pony, so the story we're able to share here means a lot to some. It's also the best because of what it represents today, especially being here on display at Riendo Hyundai. It shows what Hyundai was in the past, but how they've grown since, and there's no arguing that the Pony was a colossally awful car when new, but Hyundai's quality control has risen dramatically, especially within the past decade. And that's why it's congruently the worst car also. My father's 1987 Honda Civic Shuttle and my mom's 1987 Honda Accord that I grew up with both felt like superior vehicles in terms of build quality and interior design. Also, this is the only car we filmed this year that required us to carry an emergency battery starter and the speed dial number for roadside assistance, despite taking the car within a 2-kilometer perimeter around Sainte-Julie. The painfully underpowered 74 horsepower engine felt like it was going to stall every time we came to a stop, and the turn signals almost got me pulled over by the local police force. But none of that matters, because I got to drive a 1986 Hyundai Pony in 2018, and it was a head-turner. You'd be surprised by how many of these still exist today, even here in Quebec. But is it worth buying? A local pony enthusiast helped us out with some of the information about buying a 30-year-old Hyundai. The biggest problem with these cars was the ignition system. The parts used were bottom of the barrel in terms of quality, and it's likely why our road test was so rough at stops, as the system is very temperamental when the weather isn't absolutely perfect. It's recommended to swap out the original parts for a vented distributor cap and perform a full tune-up, especially if the pony you're looking at has been sitting for a decade or two. Wiring does seem to be pretty solid, but you might be replacing components like the turn signal relay, like we experienced as well. Part availability will be the biggest hurdle when working on a car like this. If you're looking for replacement body panels or pony-specific trim, you're going to be in for a rough time. Most cars were either junked or kept in showrooms like this, so stumbling on a pony at your local U-Pick or salvage yard likely won't happen. The interior is also very brittle, especially with its age, but we'd expect that from any 30-plus-year-old car regardless of brand. We always recommend doing a full inspection of any vehicle you're looking to purchase. Check for rust around the body panels and underneath the car. Damage could have easily been covered up or fixed hastily, so spend some time going over every little detail. All the normal things we talk about during our buyer's guides for classic German luxury cars apply to even this Hyundai Pony. Common sense, maintenance records, and the seller itself all go a long way in making a purchase like this pleasant and worthwhile. Thanks for watching this episode of Test Drive Spotlight on the 1986 Hyundai Pony GL 1.6 liter. I want to thank Riendo Hyundai in Sainte-Julie, Quebec once more for letting us film this car. I think it's amazing for them to have it on display in their dealership, and their trust in us to bring their pony back in one piece for this episode. This vehicle was bought by Riendo from Saint-Jean Hyundai in Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu, as they had two vehicles that they held on to. A car like this is a conversation starter, especially when you go into a dealership and see their heritage on display. More dealers should take note of this. As an enthusiast, I love this kind of thing. Let us know in the comments below what you think of this episode. We want to do more episodes of Test Drive on classic cars, and we're always looking for local enthusiasts who want to share their vehicles with us and the world. We're looking for cars here in Quebec at the moment, given our current budget and production schedule, so reach out to us if you have something you think is interesting. The more OEM it is, the better. Until next time, take care.